Alright, so Ether exploit has been pretty much fixed. We have the Realm Walker events becoming a lot faster, but I'm not so keen on all of the changes in today's patch. Like, our poor Evade Eagle is now pretty much nerfed into the ground, and it's not like the supposed basic material drop rate has been buffed significantly, if at all. I'm talking about Rawhide and some of the others, but I made a bunch of tests in all of the content, so let's go over the findings. Getting started with that up the side exploit fix, yeah, previously you could just bring one ether at a time, reset that materials chest, and constantly get 320 up the side for each one ether that you brought back at the chest. But unfortunately that was fixed, and now you can only open that materials chest once per run. So once you've done it the first time, it gets grayed out and it's no longer accessible, no matter how many times you bring back any remaining ether from the main room. So it's no longer worth it. Just grab everything, come in and open the chests as before, trying to get as much ether as possible to convert that immediately into the Obdicite from the materials chest. This also means that the 10 out of 10 wave of the Infernal Hordes are now going to be the best versions of this specific encounter if you're looking to maximize the yield of Obdicite per run. It's not going to be the best in the game, it comes in second, but it's still worth it, especially if you can push to 1,000 plus per run. By the way, fully suggesting that Party Finder, there are lots of folks out there who are doing the same runs. Just go in, this increases the chances for you to get even more per run. But like I said, there's actually a better method, a much faster one, which is going to be going into the Undercity with Tributes of Refinement. These are going to give you now 2,000 Obdicite per run, every single run, and it only takes about like 3 minutes for at max to finish a full run, even faster if you have a good build. And the thing about Tributes is that rare variants like the Refinement ones got a buff, so now they have a higher chance to drop, and they can also drop from pretty much any source of drops in the game, meaning that you have more chances to get even more of them. Comparing 3 minutes for 2,000 modes to like 10 to 15 minutes give or take for an Infernal Horde, in that case, even with a 1,000 plus run, let's say you would convert like 800 plus, that would translate to about 4,500 Obdicite. So that is significantly less. If we were to calculate this per hour, it's just that the tributes come on top, at least if you have a good amount of them to continue pushing. Now, in terms of some of the non-changes, let's talk about basic materials, specifically the Rawhide and yeah, like some of the iron stuff. Basically, I'm not seeing any change, just going ahead and salvaging the same amount of resources like before. It gives you pretty much the same amount of drops, so just like a dozen or a bit more in terms of Rawhide at the very least. So that's basically nothing. It means that you get 1, 2, max 3 Rawhide per item, and I'm talking about legendary, ancestral, and then uniques. Of course, with uniques giving you like 2 or 3 per salvage, which is still abysmal considering we're consuming thousands upon thousands of them. The best and highest source of drops of Rawhide that I have noticed in the new patch, and I'm pretty sure it's always been like this, is pretty much the Tree of Whispers, which gives you about 190 of those. But that's basically it. Also, in terms of nerfs, of course, you already know that Evade Eagle was about to get a nerf. Well, surprisingly, it's actually much worse than I thought. It's pretty much nerfed into the ground. Now, some people think that this is still viable. It may somewhat be in some type of content, like maybe open world, Torment tier 4, but anything in the pit is now just not going to be viable. Yeah, pretty much that dodge is now like way slower. You can no longer do dodges as fast as you were before. You basically do it like every second now because of the internal cooldown that they added. Well, fixed actually, because it was supposed to work like this from the beginning. And this means that one of the coolest builds ever in the game is no longer viable at all. But there are many other variants. I'm still surprised that the Quill Volley is still up and running, and that one was pulling way higher numbers and has way more bugs compared to Evade Eagle. So yeah, I guess Blizzard priorities. Anyway, there are some other buffs in terms of loot drops, and again, going back at that Undercity, it's also worth it to jump in for the loot, specifically legendary drops, and especially if you have any tributes of legendary quality or above. Now it's more worth it than ever to go in and use them, because you're going to get a lot more drops from the end, especially if you complete it with the max 4 out of 4 attunement. So going in here, even in a normal run, previously we would get like what, 1 or 2 drops, and many times not even one single legendary drop. Well, now even with a rare tribute, you still get like a handful of legendaries, sometimes even more, like 6 or 7 give or take. And that is actually even better if you go in and hunt for ancestrals. Now you can get at least a couple of them, sometimes a bit more. Like, this depends again on RNG and your luck. But if you have some left, or if you're specifically going to see them drop, it's now more worth it than ever to jump in and get more chances at ancestrals. Now, an interesting buff we got to the Realm Walker, and in practice it looks way better than it sounds on paper. I'm not gonna lie, it feels like it's now just breezing through the map and going through its destination. So its base speed was already increased by default, but every single phase when you take down enemies is going to provide an extra speed buff to the Realm Walker. So all in all, it took about 2 minutes from start to the end destination before the portal opened for the Realm Walker to make its entire journey, which is actually not too shabby. 2 minutes for an event is not really that bad, considering that you get so many goodies inside, especially the seething opals of equipment, which have also been fixed in the new update. So if you're looking for even more loot drops, it's now even more worth it to go in and farm for them. On top of the fact that the final encounter also drops quite a lot of those resources as well. And besides this, you also get the increased Zekrom, of course, reputation, in case you did not fully finish that yet. On a similar note, Nightmare Dungeons also got a buff, especially in terms of tier 3 mat drops, especially like up the site. You now get about 1,000 per run, compared to like the max 500 you would typically get before. So in this case, you still get the 250 by completing it, but the events and the enemies on the way there now drop significantly more than before. I've even seen enemies dropping like 100 up the side, which I don't recall ever happening. So in total, now I jumped from 16 to 17k up the side in just one single Nightmare Dungeon run. So in my opinion, I think that's going to be like twice as much as it previously was. Plus, I think there is also a provision in the patch notes that mention that high-grade crafting materials will drop even more often from endgame activities. The only other option that's relatively quicker is taking down bosses, any boss pretty much, Uber ones, as well as the Maiden in Hell Tides. If you farm those on repeat or with a group of friends, it gets you like 40 rawhide and iron chunks per drop. So that means if you continuously do it, you can definitely accumulate a few thousands if you have like at least a few dozen summons, but otherwise it's still going to be a slow crawl. Oh, and by the way, the Rod of Kapeleka has finally been fixed, so now the hit twice buff on the core skill is finally going to work, which is pretty absurd. It means now we have a lot of chances to double the damage that was already insane on this class. I mean, you can't get more absurd than this class right here. And I'm not even sure when a nerf is coming, but for the time being, Quill Volley Spiritborn is the best class that has ever existed in the game. So go ahead and enjoy it while you still can. Eventually, there might be some nerfs. This is it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.